Tonight, bullets strike the White House. Bob Orr on the man in custody. Elaine Quijano with a rare look at the officers who protect the executive mansion. The Penn State sex abuse scandal. Armin Katayan reports Jerry Sandusky's denials are adding to the pain of the alleged victims. On the campaign trail, Newt Gingrich defends the payments he got advising mortgage giant Freddie Mac. And Dr. John LaPook on one woman's decision to try a new vaccine that treats cancer and may even prevent it.
My husband kept saying, if you don't do this, you're cutting yourself short.
This is the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley.
Good evening. Police have arrested a 21-year-old man in a shooting that involves the White House. The investigation began Friday night when witnesses said they heard gunfire beyond the South Lawn. The president and the first family were out of town at the time. Yesterday, the Secret Service discovered 2 bullets had hit the mansion. Bob Orr has the latest on the investigation.
Investigators from the FBI and Secret Service used a hydraulic lift and metal detectors to search for bullets on the south side of the White House. One slug was recovered in the bulletproof glass of a second-floor window on the Truman balcony. Another was found near an exterior wall, but sources say there may be more bullets scattered around the south lawn. The suspect in the shooting, Oscar Ramiro Ortega Hernandez, who was arrested at this western Pennsylvania motel, has a long history of minor run-ins with the law. The bizarre shooting happened Friday night. Sources say a man fired a semi-automatic rifle from his car as he drove west on Constitution Avenue near the Washington Monument, about a third of a mile from the White House. Multiple shots were heard before the car and gunman sped away. 5 minutes later, the car was discovered abandoned 7 blocks away near the Lincoln Memorial. Inside the vehicle, police say they found an assault rifle, between 6 and 10 spent shell casings, and a driver's license belonging to Ortega Hernandez. Sources say he was not on the radar of the Secret Service before Friday's shooting. But investigators believe Ortega Hernandez, who is from Idaho, may have targeted the White House due to a hatred of President Obama.
Next year,
businessman Monty McCall, who recently met him, said Ortega Hernandez compared the president to the Antichrist.
He seemed very sincere in what he believed, but he did seem very, rather troubled.
The White House has been targeted before. In September 1994, a Maryland man, distraught over a domestic breakup, stole a small plane and crashed it onto the south lawn near a wall of the West Wing.
Oh my God!
And just 7 weeks later, a Colorado man, angry at President Clinton, pulled an assault rifle from his trench coat and sprayed the front of the White House with 20 to 30 shots. Ballistics tests are now being run to match the bullets found at the White House with the gun taken from the car. Prosecutors are said to be considering filing charges of attempted assassination. But Scott, we need to point out, the president was not here at the time of the shooting. He was en route to the APEC summit in Hawaii.
Bob, thank you very much. Protecting the White House is the job of the Uniformed Division of the Secret Service. We've been given rare access to this little-known police force and a look at how they train. That's coming up later in the broadcast. It is turning out that the Penn State sex abuse case may involve more victims than first thought. Former assistant football coach Jerry Sandusky is charged with abusing 8 boys over 15 years. But Chief Investigative Correspondent Armin Katayan has learned Sandusky may have abused more than 18 boys. Armin?
Good evening, Scott. We're hearing that from attorney representing several victims in this case. He said those victims told him abuse by Sandusky included rape and molestation. Minnesota Attorney Jeff Anderson has represented victims of childhood sexual abuse for nearly 30 years, including thousands of victims of pedophile Catholic priests.
The institutional failure at Penn State really parallels the institutional failure we've seen at the top level of the Catholic Church hierarchy. Top officials failing to act to protect the kids, rather choosing to protect their reputation.
Anderson is now working with several men he says survived severe sexual abuse, molestation, and rape by former Penn State coach Jerry Sandusky.
The emotions of the survivors and their families right now are really a re-traumatization. It's a mixture of despair, confusion, and fury.
A key witness against Sandusky is assistant football coach Mike McQueary. But now there are conflicting stories of exactly what McQueary did after he says he witnessed Sandusky rape a boy in 2002. McQueary has declined to discuss the case in public.
I just don't have anything else to say. That's all. Okay.
In this grand jury report, McQueary says after seeing Sandusky and the boy in the football locker room shower around 9:30 p.m., he left immediately, distraught, and that he was never questioned by university police and no other entity conducted an investigation. But in an email obtained by the Associated Press, McQueary claims when he saw the alleged attack, "I did stop it, not physically, and had discussions with police." Today, university and state college police told CBS News they have no record that McQueary reported an alleged sexual assault by Sandusky. According to the grand jury report, McQueary spoke to then head coach Joe Paterno and two top university officials, athletic director Tim Curley and vice president Gary Schultz, about the alleged attack in 2002. Both Curley and Schultz have been charged with lying to the federal grand jury and have been removed from their jobs.
Armin, thank you very much. In Washington today, Congress was judging the hefty paychecks of the executives who run two government mortgage companies, known by their nicknames Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Fannie and Freddie own half of all mortgages. Taxpayers had to bail out both companies, and Wyatt Andrews tells us that's why executives were feeling the heat on Capitol Hill.
Additionally, if anything could draw bipartisan anger in Congress, this was it. Huge paychecks and bonuses for top executives at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, when those two agencies combined have cost taxpayers $169 billion, with the losses still mounting. The two CEOs who face the heat, Fannie's Michael Williams and Freddie's Charles Haldeman, earned $9.3 million and $7.8 million over 2 years, which gives them, Republican Darrell Issa said, the best taxpayer-financed jobs ever.
Okay, but you made $9.3 million in the last 2 years. Well, the president made $800,000. You think that's okay?
Democrats railed that those million-dollar payouts could have helped more Americans keep their homes. Congressman Adolphus Towns.
Then you look at these salaries, and one would say, wait a minute, why don't we take these salaries and save a whole block?
I understand the outrage.
Haldeman of Freddie Mac said he got the message, but he defended the bonuses. Executives juggling $900 billion in taxpayer-backed mortgages, he said, had to be the best.
The people that are required are highly skilled, sophisticated, seasoned people that have many, many opportunities for high-paying jobs.
One House committee has already voted, meanwhile, voted overwhelmingly to block all future bonuses anywhere at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Now, that's not likely to pass both houses of Congress, but Scott, that's a message from Capitol Hill to stop the multi-million-dollar paydays.
Wyatt, thanks very much. Someone else who got big paychecks from Freddie Mac is Republican presidential contender Newt Gingrich. Gingrich worked for the mortgage company as a consultant after he left his job as Speaker of the House. Jan Crawford reports the advice Gingrich gave and the money he made became issues today.
On the campaign trail in Iowa, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich was questioned about how he made $1.6 million from mortgage giant Freddie Mac, some of it just before the housing market collapsed.
What did you do to actually bring
I offered strategic advice over a long period of time.
Sources tell CBS News Gingrich's relationship with the mortgage giant began in 1999, just after he resigned as Speaker of the House. For 3 years, Freddie Mac paid his company, the Gingrich Group, between $25,000 and $30,000 a month. A second contract with the Gingrich Group between 2006 and 2008 paid $600,000. That contract ended as the housing market was teetering, and with Freddie Mac playing a major role in the eventual collapse. The questions for Gingrich center on what he did to make that much money for Freddie Mac. Gingrich has insisted he did not use his contacts as former Speaker of the House to lobby members of Congress.
Now, some of it was aimed at how do you explain what you're doing and how you're doing it. But I did no lobbying of any kind.
Officials with Freddie Mac confirmed that Gingrich did not lobby but would not provide details. Other sources familiar with the contracts told CBS News Gingrich was hired to talk up the company's government-sponsored business model. In last week's CNBC debate, Gingrich explained it this way.
And I offered advice. And my advice as a historian, when they walked in and said to me, we are now making loans to people who have no credit history and have no record of paying back anything, but that's what the government wants us to do. As I said to them at the time, this is a bubble. This is insane.
Republicans, and especially Tea Party supporters, point to Freddie Mac and its competitor Fannie Mae as a symbol of everything that is wrong with big government. On the campaign trail, Michelle Bachmann jumped on it.
While he was taking that money, I was fighting against Fannie and Freddie.
But Gingrich today said his experience was a bonus.
It reminds people that I know a great deal about Washington, and if you want to change Washington, we just tried 4 years of amateur ignorance, and it didn't work very well.
But with voters sick of Washington, Scott, these disclosures are a reminder that Gingrich was very much a part of that inside Washington crowd, both as a member of Congress and then later as a big-time consultant.
Thanks, Jan. From the haves to the have-nots, the Occupy movement considers its next move. There's a new experimental vaccine for cancer, and pioneers of space get one of the highest honors on Earth when the CBS Evening News continues. The Occupy movement insists the protests are not over. In New York, a few dozen demonstrators returned today after the police removed their camp yesterday. In Seattle, last night, an 84-year-old woman was hit with pepper spray as officers fought with the marchers. But in Los Angeles, Bill Whitaker tells us the protesters have at least one big supporter.
With cities across the country saying occupiers have overstayed their welcome, L.A. Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa still has the welcome mat out for now.
I'm very proud of the fact that here in Los Angeles, we stand for the First Amendment.
Still, after 47 days taking their stand around L.A. City Hall, even some occupiers seem unclear exactly what they stand for.
Why are you out here? I don't know.
We're here because we feel that the system doesn't work anymore.
Prepare for a long zigzag struggle.
Tom Hayden, whose activism in the 1960s thrust him into politics, says occupiers might lose their encampments, but even without a focused message, they're gaining ground in the political debate. Many Americans share their frustration.
It's created real change in the climate of discussion in America towards jobs and Wall Street.
The 400 richest Americans now own more of America than the bottom 150 million Americans.
Last night at Berkeley, on the steps where the student free speech movement began 47 years ago, former Clinton administration Labor Secretary Robert Reich told campus protesters they've caught America's attention. Now comes the hard part, turning protest into policy.
There's really only one way to turn a grassroots movement into a political movement. And we saw that with regard to the civil rights movement and the anti-Vietnam movement, and that is through political organizing. It's much harder to go from moral outrage to real practical change, but I expect that this movement will be coalescing.
But it might not coalesce around either the Democrats or the Republicans. Their anger at the economic and political system is so deep and so wide, Scott, that right now they blame both parties.
Thank you, Bill. In the Capitol Rotunda today, 4 space pioneers were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. Congress's highest civilian honor was given to the first men to walk on the moon, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, along with their Apollo 11 crewmate Michael Collins, and to John Glenn, the first American to orbit the Earth. Looking for a cure for cancer? Meet a woman taking an experimental vaccine. Next. Cancer kills more than 500,000 Americans every year. But there's hope tonight that an experimental new treatment could bring those numbers down. The idea is to train the body's immune system to fight the disease, and if it works, it might be a way to prevent it. Dr. John LaPook now with a woman who's getting the new treatment.
John, you said you wanted coffee? You want coffee?
4 months ago, 47-year-old Karen Gentile was diagnosed with breast cancer. This Pennsylvania mother of two faced the biggest decision of her life, whether to delay surgery and try an experimental vaccine.
You wish you had a crystal ball to figure out the best route to go so that you don't have a recurrence. My husband kept saying, if you don't do this, you're cutting yourself short. Yeah, I have to go down to the hospital, so.
Gentile had an early form of breast cancer called DCIS. DCIS is confined to the milk ducts, but her type is aggressive and likely to recur. The therapy could lead to a cure, but signing the consent form with its list of risks scared her.
I just kept thinking, what if something bad happens down the road? All those emotions and those thoughts were going through my mind for many weeks as I was trying to decide, what to do.
Gentile is one of the first women in the world to get a DCIS breast cancer vaccine. Her husband, John, joined her when she went for the painful shots. Her hope? The vaccine may not only treat cancer, but one day stop it from occurring in the first place.
When you think about your daughters,
right,
do you think that maybe this vaccine will help them, specifically them?
I hope so. I hope it does come to that there's a vaccine that, people can be vaccinated against, breast cancer, and they'll never have to, hopefully make some of these decisions.
Here's the theory. The immune system often doesn't attack deadly cancer cells because they look so similar to normal tissue. They're basically invisible. To make the vaccine, white blood cells are taken from a patient and engineered to recognize breast cancer proteins. Once injected into the patient, these cells help the immune system identify and attack the tumor.
It may change the way we think about and treat DCIS.
University of Pennsylvania researcher Dr. Brian Zernicki is leading this first ever DCIS vaccine study.
When you first looked under the microscope and saw that the immune system was actually destroying those cancer cells, what did that seem like to you?
It's one of those ah moments where you look at it and you say, wow, this is really doing what we thought it was going to do.
The hope is to teach the immune system to stand guard against a recurrence.
In a way, these immune cells act as watchdogs?
They're watchdogs for the body, and they will protect anywhere they see a problem with the cancer proteins coming back.
Next month, Karen Gentile will have the standard breast cancer surgery she postponed, and will find out if the vaccine is starting to work. She has no regrets about taking some risk for a dream.
That I am cancer-free, and I won't have a reoccurrence and have to deal with this ever again.
We need to temper this by saying we've seen a good number of cancer vaccine failures, but the hope is using these vaccines a lot earlier will lead to more successful results. Now, more than 200 cancer vaccine trials are underway in brain, lung, and pancreatic cancers, those, Scott, that have been the hardest to treat.
John, thank you very much. They keep the president and the first family safe. A rare look inside the Secret Service unit that guards the White House. Next. Finally tonight, the starting pay is $52,000, clothing provided. But the employer warns that the job is physically demanding and requires working long hours in undesirable conditions. But Elaine Quijano tells us there is no shortage of applicants for this position, protecting the most famous house in America.
When you think of the Secret Service, you probably think of the plainclothes agents who surround the president. But it's another branch called the Uniform Division that's in charge of securing the White House.
Move back, move back.
This elite force of 1,400 officers has jurisdiction within the White House gates and beyond.
The Uniform Division has very broad arrest powers. We can arrest for local offenses in the District of Columbia as well as the federal offenses.
Sergeant Scott Saris is an instructor at the Secret Service Training Center outside Washington. We were given rare access to the 550-acre wooded facility. It features a mock-up of Marine One and Air Force One. A street set that would be the envy of any Hollywood director is used for simulations of high-intensity scenarios.
We're going to give them a lot of repetitions, and we want to give them repetitions to where they are able to just react as opposed to having to think.
More than 16,000 applied to join last year. Just 200 were chosen.
Is it easier or harder than you thought it would be?
It's been a long journey, I'll say that. It's a lot of training, and it's difficult training.
Recruit Tim Connolly made this year's cut. The former Marine served 2 tours in Iraq.
The Secret Service, we're protecting people. The Marine Corps, you're assaulting the enemy, you're locating and trying to eliminate. So something I've had to focus on in particular, maybe more than some other people, is drawing back and not just rushing through.
In this drill, Connolly found himself outnumbered and outgunned.
It's kind of similar to combat. You can be bored and think that this is an easy job, and all of a sudden you got 3 gunmen taking shots at you. You got to be on your game from moment one. You can't have first day jitters or anything like that, because that could be the day that something bad happens.
The worst happened on November 1st, 1950, when uniformed officer Leslie Kofelt was shot to death protecting President Truman. His sacrifice is remembered each year in a pre-dawn ceremony just steps from the White House. Elaine Quijano, CBS News, Laurel, Maryland.
And that's the CBS Evening News for tonight. For all of us at CBS News all around the world, good night.